Do you want me to talk anything about it, or do you just want to take it?
No, go right in. I'll plug in where.
Okay, so face off. The crowd's big into it. I mean, they're more into it than the NWA title match from before. Feels it feels, even though it's a fairly small venue, it feels big time. People are cheering very, very vociferously. Nothing but a face off for like a couple of minutes. Nothing but punches then, and then ins and outs of the ring and outside brawling. All very easy stuff. It's just basic storytelling, and the fans are reacting. You don't need to do any more than that.
Yeah.
Now, the fans like it. Stripper likes it. Because there's one bit where there's just a stripper just going through the bars, just grinning at me, which is funny.
There is a scene. There's a scene in Pro Wrestlers vs. Zombies, the most recent version, the final version of it, where all this stuff is going on in the prison. There's zombies and there's wrestlers running from the zombies. And for no explanation or reason at all, there's a lady with no top on running down a trail in the middle of the woods somewhere. And then it cuts back to the, like, well, where the hell did that, like, what was that? Like, it's almost like you're watching a movie and somebody like cut into your cable for 13 seconds and then it's gone again. And that was that's how I saw this, like, you know, I was like, well, what did that have to do with the match? I just sort of throw it in there.
Hey, well, she was into it. Why not? Actually, I missed one bit out. So Raven keeps giving fans chairs to hold and then rams your head into it. Does it 2 or 3 times. The fans are enjoying it. Back into the ring. Raven hits a Cobra clutch, and Mike TNA covers this by saying that Raven was talking to Mark Lewin earlier that week to perfect the submission. What a funny callback.
Yeah. I don't know if that was something that Raven had talked to him about, or if he knew the history with Lewin and that, because that is really like back there. That's like that's deep in the annals of wrestling history, right? And because when he started saying that he was on the phone, he had a phone call earlier this week. I'm thinking for sure he's going to say Sergeant Slaughter and go on, right?
Or Ted DiBiase, who had the same thing, or even Steve Austin, who used it. But yeah, Mark Lewin, what a callback!
Yeah, I was like, man, it goes back in there. But I thought Mike was an exceptional play-by-play guy. Really good at what he did. And, you know, he, in that line, last time I started watching on Moose's phone, and when he hit the line, I looked away from the spot. I was like, man, I didn't expect that. Like you said, there were a couple names I would have thought first prior to that. But, and I'm sure there's probably wrestling fans going, he meant Sergeant Slaughter or DiBiase or somebody. But, yeah, just one of those nuggets thrown in there that, for those that did their homework, realize, well, he's right. Yeah. There's a connection there.
There's later on in the match, there's an abdominal stretch battle, which I'd also never seen before. I'm surprised TNA didn't say Wilbur Snyder took a phone call with these two guys at the same time.
Shane Douglas was talking to Wilbur Snyder earlier this week.
Call back, have that. Let me have it. So Raven's taken nearly all of the match, which I suppose in hindsight, because I know that Raven gets his head shaved, makes all the sense in the world, because if you're losing, you're basically going to take 90% of the match to keep your heat, I guess.
Yeah.
Shane ends up busted open on the steps. Raven then gets busted open on the steps straight away. I want to mention this very briefly. Jerry Lynn bleeds in the prior match. Is that an issue if he knows that you guys are going to be bleeding in the main event?
My guess is that was a drop ball from, because I saw that piece and thought that my guess would be the company dropped the ball. Either they didn't know Jerry was getting color, or Jerry didn't know we were getting color. Somewhere the message didn't cross the lines, because it really shouldn't have been. There's no need to do that, and it detracts somewhat from it. But you should have had them back to back, and that I think it's just a drop ball. Which again, go figure.
Yeah, Jerry bleeds a gusher as well then. Anyway, we'll move on. Shane finally gets the upper hand, taunts a fan with Raven's blood on his hand. So you just go, it's actually next to the girl who looked like Chastity that Frankie Kazarian was chatting up prior. Then the abdominal stretch Which, as I say, just one of those just basic maneuvers where you actually fight over it and it means something, which is definitely interesting. You throw him out of the ring. Raven gets back I'm sorry.
Which was a hell of a bump from his point of view.
Yeah.
We typically would have readjusted once we got into that position and gotten closer to the ropes. And although I'd like to say I was strong enough to throw a guy his size that far, that really is Scotty working. And he was present of mind enough to know he was close enough that he could get to the rope. The downside of his, again, on the physics, by the time he's already so far away from the rope that to clear the rope, but now he's got to come down, and he comes down and he hits that apron hard. And, and he completely no-sold it. So it may have been just one of those things that looked worse than it was. But as somebody who's done that several times in your career, that hurts like hell. And it looks to me like he comes right down on his hip bone on that. But if you watch a second later, he's not really selling it. So, but yeah, and I think TNA calls it out on the, he in a second or two, he mentions it. He came down hard on the apron. But he really hits it hard. If you watch it back.
Raven has lost. The head shaving begins as Shane taunts on the mic. It was almost a meme back in the day, because you can taunt your face like an absolute devil. Just while you're holding the mirror in his face. This is what you are, blah, blah, blah. And, you're taunting him on the mic. James Mitchell doesn't know how clippers work. So he's shearing Raven like a sheep that has wronged him in a previous life. He's just he's doing it the backwards way. And he's scalping poor Scotty. And he's legitimately scarring his head. He had a great head of hair until that, and then he scarred so much of his follicles, basically. He's basically gave him alopecia, basically, to a point.
Yeah.
And backstage... No, actually, I'll save that for a bit. Mike TNA yells over the microphone, "This sucks, I've lost my objectivity, and I don't give a damn." And the credits roll. So, from what you remember of James Mitchell not knowing how clippers work and scalping Scotty with just blood pouring down all over the place.
The first thing I remember, the clippers in my memory as not working well. So like he was like trying to get the hair off, and so like when I'm watching the playback and it's zip. I mean, it was coming off a lot easier than I thought it was. And in my recollection, I recalled it that like it had scraped his head, like he had scratches on his head. And there's the one camera angle where his head from behind jutting back, and you can see like there's an entire strip of skin gone on top of his head. And I'm like, oh my God. I know we joked about it at the time, like the scalping and everything, but when you see that, and I'm sure Scotty, probably felt it, but when you're in the ring and doing that stuff, you're not really feeling stuff like as much as you would if you were just going to do it to your head right now. But I remember looking at that and like literally my mouth, like, oh my God, like they ain't kidding. Like we really did scalp them, or James really did scalp them. And, just seeing that like strips of skin being cut off and then the blood coming. I remember Raven getting to the back. He was pretty upset, but I don't think James, because again, like in my memory, it was like he said, I would like it wasn't quite working. And when I'm watching it, zip, and well, okay, that's different than I remember.
No, these were like wired ones, so they're not like the battery powered ones. These are wired ones, and when I wasn't really being facetious, like shearing a sheep. They were almost like sheep clippers. They were huge things, so they were going to get the job done.
Yeah. And like you said, you're supposed to go front to back, right? And pull the hair up.
No. He put the sharp bit downwards and dug it into his head. It doesn't matter which way you do it.
Yeah.
But you have to hold them. You have to have the flat metal bit on the scalp, not the putty teeth. Doing that, digging it. So that's why it was stripping his skin. Crazy.
Oh my God. Yeah. When like I said, in my recollection, it was like it had scratched his head, like like cut like singular cuts. And there's that one camera shot where his head is back, and then you can see like the 1.5 inch long skin stripped out. I was like, Jesus God. That was I can see now why they call it a scalping, because it literally was a scalping. And I've got to ask Scotty that because like, as he's sitting there, you don't see him like, oh, hey, that hurts, easy or whatever. So I'm guessing that he probably didn't quite feel it because again, it was like zip, zip. But boy, when you see that entire gouge off his scalp, it's just like, woof. Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, not on the greatest authority, but I did read, it was reported that Raven tried to punch Mitchell in the back.
Yeah, like I said, I remember, I don't know if he tried to punch him, but I remember him being, pretty angry in the back, as you can imagine, right? But by that time, there's, being sweaty and scalpy, there's still hair stuck to his head and, it had bled over and, so you weren't sure if it was like a razor blade cut, is this a wrestling cut or is it, which is probably why I never had the recollections of having seen that camera angle. And that, I would have been pissed too. I mean, that's a life altering thing, especially for those of us that are well coiffed, right? I mean, it's a career ender.